The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the latest episode of Star Trek Prodigy, Dreamcatcher. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Very well, thanks. Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Star Trek on Facebook, where we're at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Retweet us on Twitter, where we're at SQPN, and be sure to leave comments wherever you find us. Stick around to the end of the show, because we're going to have your feedback that is on our first several episodes of Prodigy. So we have some excellent feedback there. And I also want to tell you about another show that on the StarQuest Network that you will definitely enjoy called Secrets of Stargate. This awesome franchise. It's got several shows that's part of it. 10 series of SG-1, 7 series, I forget, seasons of Atlantis, and one all too short season of Universe, and whatever else is involved. A couple. And you can check it out. It's just getting started on our network, and it's been really good. Definitely should check it out. It's at wherever you find fine podcasts or at sqpn.com/Stargate. But this time we're talking about Star Trek Prodigy and this latest episode called Dreamcatcher. Jimmy, could you give us a recap of this episode?
This time, Holo-Janeway has been training the crew in how to actually run the Protostar. They come across an uninhabited planet in the Holo-Janeway system, and Janeway insists that they investigate as part of their Starfleet Space Cadet training. When they get to the planet, the ragtag crew separates, and they each encounter what are pretty easy to spot as illusions of some of their deepest desires. Jankum Pog finds a pot of stew. Rock Talk finds a tribe of super cute living Furby toys. Zero encounters a mystery to engage his mind, and Dal encounters an illusion of his parents, who he can't even remember. It turns out that the planet is a giant telepathic superorganism that creates illusions of its prey's desires in order to keep them still long enough to grab them with its tendril-like vines and start digesting them. The kids figure this out on their own and head back to the Protostar in a space dune buggy they have called the Runaway. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Gwen has escaped from the brig, reprogrammed Janeway, and is about to take off and ditch everybody. But when she tries to take off, it turns out vines are holding the ship down. She goes outside to cut them off, and she encounters an illusion of her father, but quickly realizes it isn't him. As the rest of the gang is racing back to the ship, she starts to take off, but the vines are hanging on so tight that they force an emergency engine shutdown, causing the ship to crash. Gwen jettisons to safety, but when Dal and the gang arrive, they declare that she's stranded them all, giving us our first dramatic cliffhanger ending, the end.
So I gotta say, this episode kind of, the way it ended kind of took me by surprise a little bit. I mean, we've gone right to ship deprivation, ship separation in the third episode.
Yeah, although there's a much larger issue that really is seriously affecting this series that we need to talk about urgently. It is the opening credits. If you time them out, the opening credits are 1 minute and 40 seconds long. And there's another full minute of closing credits. That's 2 minutes, 40 seconds of credits per episode. These credits are out of control. We need to have an intervention. When do you think you're making this program? Today, credits are like 5 seconds long, not more than 2.5 minutes. This is ridiculous. Someone has a credit addiction.
Insert the meme of that guy from New York who ran on the rent is too darn high. Well, here'll be Jimmy. The credits are too darn long.
Yeah. That's right. That's the funny thing is I don't notice because, given that everything is online these days, I just hit skip intro and I get right into it. But yeah,
that's okay if the skip intro button is there, but half the time it's not.
I know. Right. It goes away if you don't get to it quick enough. That's a good point. That is actually a good point. Given that it's only 24 minutes long, the whole episode, 2
Really, the
minutes of
episode's
that
only
is
20.
what's that?
Yeah.
2 minutes 40.
Yeah, it's 10% of the episode is taken up with that. So yeah, that's a good point. That is
It's
too
kind of
long.
surprising because especially for kids programming, you'd think they would want to keep the credits as short as possible.
To let the kids
But-
get into it, the show.
Yeah,
And not get
exactly.
distracted. Yeah, that's true.
Now, speaking of credits, the title itself, I when I saw the title was going to be Dreamcatcher, my first thought was, of course, the Native American object known as a Dreamcatcher.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which is a protective charm that is very traditional to some tribes. And so I thought, oh, this is the Chakotay episode. This is where we're going to find Chakotay.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because of course, it's like my first thought was they wouldn't be stupid enough to do that because, of course, that's one of the most controversial issues of Chakotay's character is how Native American spirituality was abused in Voyager.
Right.
But then it's like, this is the Star Trek people. Of course, they would be stupid enough to do this.
Well, apparently they didn't do it. I guess the Dreamcatcher, and by the way, that you'll see this written different ways out there. And Paramount itself has sometimes made it one word and sometimes two words. I'm not sure that matters as a difference, but
No.
Apparently the Dreamcatcher in this case is the planet itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, it's
Yeah.
catching their dreams and using them against them.
which is a common trope, and trope is not a negative. It's a common feature of a lot of children's shows because children have dreams, and sometimes those dreams involve things that they really want, and so it's often the moral is be careful what you wish for. That's sort of played out in that sort of thing, or be careful of things that seem too good to be true. Often are, and I think that's kind of what we're clearly
that's
getting
okay.
here.
Hansel and Gretel, right there.
Yep.
yes, a house made of candy.
So they go to this planet in the Holo-Janeway system, and we have a name drop of the Holo-Janeway from the original Voyager series, who were one of the alien antagonist races they encountered.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that there's an M-class uninhabited world in the Holo-Janeway system because the Holo-Janeway were a spacefaring civilization. You would expect there to be colonies and satellites and weed killer on this planet.
Right.
But
except for the fact that clearly the planet itself is the organism, and there's weed killer would kill the entire planet, and the planet would just be a desolate rock then.
And the Holo-Janeway are an intelligent race, and so they would have killed the hostile native infested planet life form, I would think. Janeway, though, says that they've detected psyllium-like vegetation on it, and I'm going, really? Psyllium? My first thought was psyllium, the class of plantago, plantain vegetable vegetation that we get psyllium husk, the dietary fiber and soup thickener from. But then no, they didn't mean that. They meant psyllium as in the Latin word for eyelash, which psyllium is an organelle of eukaryotic cells that looks like an eyelash, hence the vines we encounter on the planet.
So vine-based plants is what you meant to say.
Yeah.
Well, I was surprised that they would go anywhere near the Holo-Janeway system. I mean, that just would seem like a bad idea that Holo-Janeway would say, oh, by the way, the Holo-Janeway are a very dangerous species that we should stay far away from. But she takes them right to that system. They don't run into any yet, but it's kind of interesting. I wanted to talk a little bit about Holo-Janeway. She's teaching the kids how to operate the ship. She still thinks they're cadets, but does she? Does the hologram, has it fallen for the obvious lie that they're actually cadets? I mean, is it that dumb, or is this hologram kind of playing a long game? What do you guys think is going on?
I have a feeling they're going to have some point that the kids are going to have to admit, yes, we're not really cadets, we're escapees from this prison planet, and she'll go, I figured something else was going on. Right. I mean, I think they're going to be just that simple. Of yes, I realize you're not actually cadets, but you want to play that game, that's fine, we can play it.
Okay.
They may go that way, but if they do, I think I think one way or another, they're definitely going to build it up as a crisis point where they have to confess.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That seems to be the way that they're structuring these episodes too. Is these building up these crisis points where they have to make a moral choice and make a decision to go the good path or the bad path, and they keep doing that, which is again common for children's programming.
But by the way, speaking of Holo-Janeway, did either of y'all notice that when they're leaving the ship and Rock says, "Aren't you coming with us?" Janeway says holograms can't leave the ship, using the plural.
Yep.
There may be more than one hologram the ship is capable of generating.
Exactly.
Right. Although the Doctor had its emitter, so that was something he could do.
Yeah, but that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is she used the plural. Holograms cannot leave the ship.
Oh,
right. So are we gonna see that the original crew of the Protostar in holograms at some point, like Chakotay and some of these other members that are supposedly
Robert
mentioned?
Picardo as the Doctor,
which would be awesome.
That would be kind of awesome. What do you think of Holo-Janeway compared to the real Janeway? Does she act like her? Does this seem like Janeway?
Her voice sounds
apart from
older.
the voice. Yeah. I was gonna say apart from the voice. But is this how you would expect Janeway to act?
She, as a not fully human being training instruction program, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
she's got her coffee mug.
Yeah, I don't expect her to be exactly. I mean, they wrote Kate Mulgrew differently in different episodes to begin with, and I don't expect her to be an exact representation of Janeway. I expect her to be an artificial, simplified version that conveys the flavor of Janeway.
Sure. I get that. Yep. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't expect it to be the same, but I was just kind of curious what you guys thought of this Holo-Janeway as a character, compared to the real Janeway. So they get to this planet, and we have an interesting. They're going to do this away mission, and there's this interesting moment where instead of beaming down, which is what Star Trek is all about, they just, as a matter of course, land the ship. So the ship took off from that original mining planet, and it's landing on this planet. What do you think of this idea of we're going to be regularly landing instead of beaming? Any thoughts on that as a plot point?
Well, from a writing perspective, it makes it more dramatic if they have to land and if they don't have beaming technology available to them. I assume they do have beaming technology, but why they're not... I mean, in this episode, if they had used beaming technology, we wouldn't have the ending that we did, and that's what they were going for.
Right.
So whether they'll introduce beaming technology in the future, I don't know. I could see from a writing perspective, there would be an argument against it because it will make the series more dramatic if they're landing and if they don't have magical transporters they're constantly using. On the other hand, given what they've established about the level of Starfleet technology, unless they do something to break the transporters irreparably, there is no reason they shouldn't have them.
And you can make an argument that this was part of their training and all that, to learn how to land the craft and everything. But yeah, at some point we're going to have the transporters come in, just like we've got a shuttlecraft. Of course, it's the damaged one that Rock broke her way out of. But
I like that they kept that there was a little continuity from there, that it wasn't just a fully functional shuttlecraft in the bay that had been replicated, but it's the same one that got broke last time.
Yep.
that they're in. Father Cory, you sent me a link this week to a Reddit thread that kind of discussed the relative size of the Protostar compared to other ships we know. So it's smaller than the Voyager, and bigger than both Defiant and the Equinox. From the Equinox was a Voyager ship.
Right, and I got a kick out. The reason why I sent it to Dom, because I got a kick out of the measurement unit of measurement to try to figure out the ship. One Janeway.
Yes.
So of course it's canon how tall Janeway was. I think 1.65 meters. And so they were able to use one shot where you could see the entire view screen or the entire windshield, I guess you can call it, and then measure how many Janeways it was. So
it reminds me of the Smoot as a unit of measurement, which is famous here in Boston at MIT decades ago, like in the 50s or 60s. There was a guy whose last name was Smoot, and they measured the Mass Ave bridge from Cambridge to Boston in smoots. And you can go there now and see the markings on the bridge, one smoot. So it kind of reminded me of that. So let's talk about in this episode. One of the things that kind of comes across is Del is kind of a jerk to the other guys.
You think?
He's bossy. He makes the decisions for everyone. And at one point when Gwyn asks him, hey, what about that? Under different circumstances, we could have been friends, when he's leaving her in the brig. He's just like flippant and sarcastic toward her.
Well, that's part of what they're doing over the course of this series. They're having these kids start out at odds with each other, and over the course of time, they will grow and mature and form bonds.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a flawed character that will grow, basically, yeah.
And I guess, to be fair, although, the way that Dal did it was overly sarcastic, but Gwyn wasn't exactly, standing up for them when they were in, basically in a prison,
right.
Literally in a prison as minors. And she was living the life as the daughter of the head guy. And now she kind of expects that they're going to be lenient on her.
Right. Yeah. I mean, she's going to betray them at the first opportunity.
Exactly. She's like totally been adriking these people.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I got to say, I really like that sword, the melty sword thingy she's got as a plot device. That is pretty good.
And it turns out she's got a telepathic link to it, so she can presumably machine telepathy, but she's got a telepathic link to it and can control it at a distance, which she could have done some of that before now. Yes.
I mean, she could, if she was really ruthless, she could have sent it through them, the rest of them, and then let herself out and didn't. So there's hope for her.
We also find out that when she escapes while they're off the ship and she knows how to use lots of stuff on the Protostar, she has this self-revelation of, this is why my father has been training me in linguistics and computer technology and all this stuff. It's so I would know how to use this ship that turns out he's obsessed with. So he was preparing me for this without even knowing it. And then when she reprograms Janeway, and Janeway is totally, on her side, not evil, but just flipped sides. That is scary. That is effective,
Right.
I like the way they do that too. Is this is a ship is property of the United Federation of, and it's all yours.
Yeah, right. Where do you want to go? Which it shows the potential flaw of a programmable crew member. That idea that you just reprogram it and it's now yours.
Oh, like they haven't had mind control plots on Star Trek before.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
And we've also seen the Doctor get reprogrammed in the past and taken over. So, yeah.
Also, the even though Janeway is now serving her, she's still like, when Gwyn wants to leave, she's like, Starfleet officers do not abandon their crews.
Yeah.
Right? And so she's still got her Starfleet ethics, even though she's now programmed to obey Gwyn's orders.
Interesting Murph there as a character. When Gwyn is sitting in the brig by herself and Murph is there, she says, you're smarter than you look. And then he goes off chasing the little robot or not. And what was it about Murph that she was seeing there, do you think?
Well, I think she was contemplating what is obvious from the writing, that at some point Murph is going to turn out to be smarter, is very likely to turn out to be smarter than he appears, because he appears to have roughly dog level intelligence.
Yeah.
But why is he's not he's portrayed in a way that suggests he's more than that. And so she's picking up on that, but then he reverts to dog-like behavior, which could be part of his evil plot cake.
Yeah.
But I do like at the end when she's crashed the shuttlecraft and number one, she stayed to get Murph.
Yes.
To protect him. And when they open up the hatch and reveal Gwyn and Murph sitting in the wrecked shuttlecraft, Murph is whimpering kind of like a little dog, and it's very cute.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And she's like kind of holding and protecting him, which is it shows a little bit of her personality.
And what I wonder too is, they've revealed that she has some telepathic capabilities, both being able to block, but also, again, to be able to control that device, that the sword. So I wonder if there's something there too, where she's able to sense that Murph has more going on up there than he shows. And of course, he could just be, this is how his species acts as a 5-year-old kid.
Right. You know, it could just be a kid. So it's interesting when they first land, it seems to be the first experience on a green habitable planet for most of them, an M-class planet, at least for Dal. But I think for most of them, they talk about it that way. So
I like Dal's original line. It's like, oh no, no M-class planets, only A-class planets for us.
Yeah, right. Well, it kind of highlights that we use a Vulcan classification system to classify our planets, sort of arbitrary. I have to say I like the Runaway, which is the dune buggy that Janeway gives them, and Del takes off on his own. You know, the lesson, the moral of today's episode: look out for one another, and look what happens when you don't. They all go off in their separate directions. Unlike a Starfleet crew would have stayed together and still had the same problems, I suppose. But
yeah.
Well, it's sort of like, okay, we've seen this before. This is just the episode Shore Leave, except the Shore Leave planet wants to eat you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, this is Shore Leave. Rather than entertain you, it wants to eat you.
Well, it wants to entertain you first. Then it wants to eat you. Yes. So it's show and a dinner instead of dinner and a show.
So speaking of show, they have the show don't tell problem here with Dal when he goes off and he finds his parents, or he thinks is his parents.
Yep.
And of course they're talking about, he realizes very quickly that it's not his parents, that's not the Janeway hologram that's out there, but that the planet is the problem. And of course then they have to say, oh, you're smarter than kind of this, you're smarter than you look type.
Right.
You're too smart for your own good. And of course they really haven't shown him other than, just having kind of the bravado and arrogance, but they haven't really shown him having the intelligence.
I like the fact that the kids figure this one out and solve the major problem for themselves, instead of Janeway swooping in to give them the answer like she did an episode or two ago.
Yeah.
I like that they go encounter genuine danger on a planet and save each other. And would have been just absolutely fine if Gwyn hadn't gone all dark side on them.
Right. So briefly, the things that they desired, their hearts desired, was Rock sees cute little creatures who love her that she gets to play with. Zero is enamored of a mystery. So apparently he loves a maze, and at the heart of the maze is the mystery of what the secret drive besides warp drive on the Protostar is. This drive,
which is just the writers reminding us that thing is there for the future.
Yep. We mentioned Dal and his parents, who he doesn't remember what they look like, so we only ever see them from the back.
Yeah, I like we don't see their faces.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Jankum sees a Tellarite home with a pot of Tellarite stew.
It looked like an elf home to me, but it did have stew in it, and that was what he was most interested in.
Yeah, he as he walks out of the ship, he comments that he's hungry. One thing that Jankum drops is just real quick is that we find out that he ended up in the Delta Quadrant as part of a sleeper ship, a Tellarite sleeper ship.
Right.
So he was a colony ship basically from Tellar. Is how he ended up there. So we know he didn't show up on the Protostar, because that's one thing we kind of questioned is how did these Alpha Quadrant races get there? Did they come in on the Tellarite on the Protostar? Were their families the original crew of the Protostar? Well, obviously in his case he's not.
That's true. The one little flaw, he's wearing an environmental suit because he's afraid of the environment. So how does he?
And I wanted to compliment that actually, because just because your sensors say you can breathe the air doesn't mean you know everything about this environment.
Which
presumably you have, presumably you haven't scanned every microorganism that could be a pathogen.
Yeah.
And so actually keeping your suit on would make a lot of sense.
I mean, Galaxy Quest shows that perfectly. I mean, they land on the planet and don't open that. It could be poisonous.
Yeah. It's not an effective environmental suit since you can smell things.
Well,
and spores can get in it.
That was part of the illusion by the planet. I thought it was, they were saying, because he wouldn't be able to smell it, but the planet was, he was getting that sense of smell as part of his illusion.
Because the planet is clearly telepathic. That's how it's pulling out their deepest desires. So if it's a passive telepath that can receive information, it may be an active telepath that can probe and project sensations into a person. In fact, it would seem that that's the case. Otherwise, how does it generate the illusions that people are seeing? If it can generate visual illusions for everybody else, it should be able to generate olfactory illusions for Jankum.
Right.
They do mention at one point spores, but I guess that's might also be spores and telepathy.
Yeah,
but they really didn't show it. But I mean, not just sense of smell, sense of touch. Rock is feeling these animals kiss her. She says, "Oh, their kisses are so wet."
Right.
And that's a sense of touch. So all the senses can be affected by sound, of course, too, and things like that. So all the senses can be affected by this. So it would make sense that he's in his suit, which means he shouldn't smell anything except whatever the filtered air in the suit smells like.
Right.
But all of a sudden he smells this stew. He smells the gas. That of course, they have to have the fart joke, whereas he's walking to get the gas spouting up.
He even comments on how is this possible? That shouldn't be possible, or something.
Right.
And we do get, and to me that was ambiguous, where he's encountering the green gas that smells funny. Because they don't say what it smells like. I wasn't sure if that was a fart joke or not, but we did get a fart joke earlier.
Yep.
And where Janeway's given them their tricorders and Zero detects a gaseous emission and Jankum says that was me. And it's like, thank you for understating it. If you're going to do fart jokes, thank you for not playing the sounds of farting.
Yeah.
They do it later with the green gas, which makes the weird farty sort of sound, but
and every kid from about the age of 5 to 50 laughed at that. So
right.
I didn't. I'm not a fan of fart jokes in any form.
So so the end of the episode, the Protostar kind of crashes. I mean, it is
and this is not really realistic. If you have antimatter engines that can fling you through space faster than light, vines should not hold you down.
Yeah. It should be able to break through the vines, throw up your shields, use phasers. I mean, there are all kinds of things that the Holo-Janeway should have been able to at least tell them about, as ideas. So we have this. Also, we forgot to mention that Gwyn signaled her father to come pick her up and pick up the Protostar. So he's apparently on the way.
Right.
But then she sees the hallucination of her father, of the diviner, and it's his fatherliness toward her that is the clue that helps her realize that's not really her father, which is kind of both sad and revealing at the same time.
Real dad is apparently not into hugging.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing, going back to the crash of the ship, remember, we are on a planet that is telepathic.
Oh.
So did the ship actually crash? I mean, and you can see smoke and everything, but again, this planet is obviously able to trick their senses to begin with.
Yeah. Good point.
So I mean, that's again a trope too of, we saw our ship crash and know the ship is actually sitting there behind a force shield or a telepathic screen or whatever. So I mean, it's possible too that the ship didn't actually crash, but that it did land somewhere else. I mean, they could have done that. There's so many things they could have done.
Yeah, the leap to "you've stranded us" may be an appropriate kid logic leap, but really, okay, the ship is on the other side of that hill.
Yeah.
And it could be just fine.
Yeah. My guess is that, 3 episodes in, they're not getting rid of their brand new ship that is in the credits. It's still going to be there for
the excessively long, interminable credits.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to talk about the future schedule for the rest of the season of Prodigy in a second that we found out about. But any more thoughts on Dreamcatcher, Father Cory?
The one thing, we talked before about Rock Talk, how her sounds like a kid. Well, actually, she is. The actress who's voicing her is a 10-year-old kid.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's pretty impressive, actually. So, yeah, this is one of those cases, a lot of times kids in TV, and this isn't just Star Trek, this is all TV, they're actually played by much older actors.
Bart Simpson is like, I don't know, 50, 60 years old.
Well, Cirque Lofton was an adult when he was playing Jake Sisko.
Yeah. So,
I mean, this is one case where the actor is actually playing a character of her age or pretty close to it.
Uh-huh.
So that's fairly impressive, actually. So that comes across, I think, pretty well. It really fits the character well.
Back in the 1930s and 40s, there were lots of movies about young people that were clearly being played by, like, Andy Rooney movies and stuff that were clearly being played by actors that were in at least their 30s. and they once made fun of that on Mystery Science Theater 3000, where they were watching such a movie, and then during one of the host segments, they had a bunch of screen caps from the movie, and we're talking about the old school where where all the teenagers are old.
Oh yeah. Well, and then one scene I got a kick out of was they're getting the tricorders and the phasers, and of course they've upgraded the tricorders and the phasers. They're more futuristic again. And Jankum stuns himself. Great way to introduce the fact that phasers default to stun.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to mention, talk about the age of the actors. So the other actors are all in their 20s, except for the actor who plays Jankum, Jason Mantzoukas, is 48. Which is, I think he's dramatically older than everybody else.
And of course, Kate Mulgrew is much older than 20, so we won't say that old, but Brett Gray is in his 20s. Angus Imrie, who plays Zero, and Ella Purnell plays Gwyn. They're all in their 20s, so interesting. Jimmy, any other thoughts?
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about the planet they're on. First of all, my hypothesis is that this is a version of Arrakis that has been transported between dimensions, because when they land on it, it clearly has petrified sandworms all over the place that have been petrified in mid-leap.
Yes, yeah.
Also, even though it's a CGI planet, Vasquez Rocks is there, even on the CGI planet. And in general, I really like the alien planet surface. It's very well done. It is more fantastic and more visually interesting than what they could do in a live action series. And so it's nice to see them exploit that potential and give us a really interesting alien environment to look at, or set of alien environments to look at.
Yeah, for those who don't remember, Vasquez Rocks is a place in Southern California where lots of scenes from Star Trek have been filmed, most recently in the Picard series, but also in Shore Leave.
Most famously in the Gorn episode. It's where Kirk fights the Gorn.
Right.
And I have been there. I took a road trip up to Vasquez Rocks. It's outside Los Angeles, and it's fun to go there and stand where all that stuff happened and look at it from different angles. And it's like, I can see in this episode they showed it from this angle, but in this other episode they showed it from this other angle. And also watch out for rattlers while you're there. They have signs up warning you about them.
Yes. So that's Dreamcatcher. Before we move on to feedback, I want to talk a little bit about the schedule for Prodigy. We found out more about how the Paramount Plus is going to be airing it. So we're going to have, this was the fourth episode.
Yeah, so it's technically the fourth episode because the first episode was a two-parter.
That
was just aired as one.
Third week to air.
Right.
So we're only going to get one more episode of Prodigy. Then they're going to take a break for Discovery season 4, and then in January, Prodigy will come back for another set of 5, and then presumably at some later point, perhaps after Picard season 2, we'll get the rest of 10 episodes of Prodigy. and whatever else comes after that. So it's also been picked up for a second season. They also announced that. So after next week, we'll be going back to talking about some other some of the older
Discovery,
seasons, but not Discovery.
Right,
not Discovery.
Because
not Discovery
this Thursday,
4.
This Thursday, the 18th, is going to be again the 5th episode, 4th airing of Prodigy, and the first episode of Discovery season 4. So that's why they're doing it that way.
Right, and as we discussed, we're not going to be doing an episode by episode of Prodigy of Discovery season 4. We may come back to talk about it as a whole at some point down the line, but we're not going to do that now. We'll be
because
going back.
We love you.
Yes,
yes.
We don't want to submit and subject
and
or us to that.
And we like our sanity.
So that's what's coming up. I promised you some listener feedback, so let's get to that now.
You did, and it's time to pay that off.
I have to pay off my promises. I always do. So our first feedback is from K.A. Maximilian K on Twitter, who wrote, I'm listening to SQPN's newest Secrets of Star Trek, and I'm going to have to disagree with Jimmy on this one for how woke it has the potential to be, mainly because it's Nickelodeon, and mainly due to Blue's Clues, which is younger than 7+, and has definitely had some woke lately, and The Loud House. That being said, though, just because it can have that doesn't mean it will. So I will remain cautiously optimistic, as SQPN's analysis and opinion of Lower Decks is what got me to try that as well. Keep up the good work, though, everyone.
So I try to phrase myself very carefully, and what I said was that it should be tamped down. We shouldn't have to deal with as much wokeness as we do on other things, and that remains true.
Yeah.
I recognize that they do and have for a while been putting woke stuff into children's television, but in a low-keyer way than with adult television, and I already see the woke stuff in this. I mean, it is clearly there, but it is played. I can think, I mean, of the main characters, at least 4 of them have woke elements built into them, but they're playing it low key. And that was my point, that we shouldn't have it to worry about being totally in your face the way it is in Discovery.
Yes.
Yeah.
Discovery.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed. And I am still remaining cautiously optimistic as well. It's been good so far, so I'm looking forward to more.
It's been fun.
All right. Thank you, K.A. Maximilian K. Our next feedback comes from Chris Buckley via email. He says, this is in reference to our discussion of Star Trek, the J.J. Abrams reboot, and Grand Canyons in the middle of Iowa. He says, I'm stunned by your callous ignorance of the Xindi incident of 2153. The tragic human cost of this unprovoked attack left scars across North America that all Federation members mourn along with the people of Earth to this day. Regardless of which timeline you inhabit, a moment of silence is in order for the thousands of lives lost in this pivotal moment of Federation history.
It is, and in remembering the Xindi incident on Xindi Day, we also need to be careful to remember precisely who suffered. It was there is now a Grand Canyon in Florida and up the East Coast, but still not in Iowa.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
There is a wide gap between Florida and Iowa.
In many ways.
But thank you, and don't forget to put up your Xindi Day decorations.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Joe sent an email. Great shows on an interesting new series. I liked Jimmy's characterization of this show as the most Star Wars-like Star Trek series. 2 quick things I noticed. Gwyn's species reminds me strongly of Jayla's species from Star Trek 2009. Likewise, the Rev 12 reminds me strongly of the Narada from that same movie. I wonder if there's any connection, particularly with the divergent timelines model of the new movies. Keep up the good work, and may the Force live long and prosper. Joe, one thing I want to point out. So Jayla was from Star Trek Beyond, which was the second reboot movie, third reboot movie.
But it's an interesting connection. They might be the same race.
They could be. It's very similar. And the Narada was the original J.J. Abrams reboot movie, but that was Romulan. So it doesn't mean it can't be connected, but just to point out. But thank you, and thanks for joining us. Thomas Salerno left a comment on our YouTube channel, SQPN's YouTube channel. He wrote, "Hi, Dom, Father Cory, and Jimmy. Thanks for covering this new show. I'm only an occasional Star Trek viewer. In fact, my first memorable exposure to Star Trek was Enterprise. I watched it on the Sci-Fi Channel as a teenager. I've now seen most of TOS and a bit of DS9, but have never been able to get into Trek as much as other science fiction series. Prodigy caught my eye due to its superficial similarity to the Star Wars animated shows that I love. So I watched the first episode and I really enjoyed it. This seems like the kind of fun space adventure series that I can really get behind. I'm looking forward to your future Prodigy reviews." Thanks, Thomas.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised that you may have had a shakier introduction, to Star Trek, given that you started with Enterprise, which was one of the two shakiest shows before the modern era, where we've had positively, 9 on the Richter scale shakiness. But there is good stuff back there, and keep checking out the original series and also Next Gen, at least from season 3 or 4 onward, and Deep Space Nine from season 3 or so onward.
Yeah, definitely. Once you get into season 2 of DS9, it starts picking up the pace. But yeah, don't judge Star Trek by first seasons. Definitely.
One thing I will say, at least you can give credit to the modern series of Star Trek, is they've gotten rid of the first season awkwardness.
Yeah, if they're going to be bad, that you can tell from the first season. Yeah.
Well, Discovery was bad from the beginning. Lower Decks was great from the beginning. This is turning out pretty good.
Yeah.
I've been enjoying this. It's been a lot of fun. So, yeah, they've got rid of first season shakiness, at least.
Discovery season 2, I still maintain, was good. I liked Discovery season 2. But yeah, you're right.
And then it regressed to the mean.
Yes. Well, we what's the difference? Strange New Worlds will be good. Let's put it that way. Yeah. That's my hope. It's going to be Captain Pike was what made season 2 good. All right. But welcome aboard, Thomas. We welcome you among the Trekkies. All right. That's it for our feedback. We want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of Star Trek, including Kristen R., Deacon Greg W., Nancy K., John S., and Hans G. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. We would love to hear from you what you think of Dreamcatcher. Let us, this third episode of Prodigy's first season, you can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, or our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to trek@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the next new episode of Prodigy. So until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Thanks, Tom.
And Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thank you, and live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, look out for each other.